Let's examine a case study that occurs frequently on many intensive care units. A new patient is admitted who is not doing well. She was in a car accident and her injuries are life-threatening. She is unable to tell staff what type of medical care she would like to receive. The patient's family arrives and are in shock over her situation. The medical team gives them an update and discusses different options for care. The patient's family struggles to make sense of what happened to their loved one and also what care she should receive. The patient has never discussed with them what decisions she would like them to make for her. To help the patient's family, medical staff ask, "What is your understanding of what's happening with your loved one?" The responses vary. Some understand much of what was said, some very little, and some have no answer. The patient has not created an advanced care plan. This is a plan that tells family members and the medical team who can make medical decisions for a patient and what those choices should be. This case study is not unusual, as only 30% of adults in Michigan have created an advanced care plan.
I see patients and their families every day in the hospital. Oftentimes I'm having discussions with family members who are trying to make decisions for their loved ones who can no longer speak for themselves. And I very often come across two scenarios. The first being, when I ask what this patient would want for their health care, the family says, "Oh, happy to say we've talked all about this. We have an advance directive. We know who should be making decisions. We've talked broadly about certain situations, and we feel pretty comfortable that we know what our loved one would want in this situation when they're very sick." The other scenario, unfortunately, which is quite common, is we have no idea what our loved one would want. We desperately wish they could speak for themselves. We don't even know who should be making decisions. We didn't even know some of these scenarios were possible, and it is extremely difficult. And I'm there to help guide them through, but that second group of people always wish that they had had the discussion and that piece of paper that just says, who should make my decisions, and that prompts the next discussion about what those decisions should be.
Why have so few people created an advanced care plan? Did you know that 97% of people say that it's important to put their wishes in writing, but only 30% have actually created a document? 92% of people say that talking with their loved ones about end-of-life care is important, but only 32% have actually done so. 80% of people say that if seriously ill, they would want to talk to their healthcare provider about wishes for medical treatment towards the end of their life. And finally, 18% reported having had this conversation with their healthcare provider.
Yeah, I've heard you both say crisis mode, and I unfortunately meet or have the privilege of meeting people and helping them and their families in a crisis mode very often. And if I'm able to talk to the patient themselves, I'll say, here's what's going on medically. Here are some of your options. Here are all of your options. What are your wishes, especially if you get sicker, extremely sick, and no longer able to speak for yourself? And I hear people say quite often, well, let's not worry about that right now. Let's address that when we get there. And I say, the gift that you can give your family, and I heard you guys both say gift, is to talk about it now when you're doing okay, so that we can have a plan for when you're sicker, for if you get sicker. And so waiting until it's even more of a crisis is such a burden on families to have to really guess, because it is a difficult conversation, and I think a lot of people avoid it. But if you can sit down and there's a framework that you can work through and a guidebook that you can read through with your loved ones, it really does spell out the decisions you can make. And it doesn't have to be traumatic, and it really does end up being a gift to do before you're in a crisis.
The first thing to consider when creating your advanced care plan is who you will select as your patient advocate. A patient advocate is the person who will speak on your behalf should you be unable to make your own treatment decisions regarding your medical and/or mental health care. Michigan law requires that this person be age 18 or older. You are not required to name your next of kin or other family member as your patient advocate. Your patient advocate may live in another state. We strongly encourage you to select a successor patient advocate who will take on this role should your patient advocate decline the role or otherwise be unable to act as your advocate.
What does it take to be a good advocate? It really is pretty simple too. It takes somebody who's able and willing. They have to be able to communicate, to listen to your wishes, and to be able to understand them and hear you out. They have to be somebody who's able to do that and willing to take on the role. And not everybody is, and that's okay. But we think that this is best when asked in an advanced way. And if somebody, maybe it's somebody in your family member, a family member, maybe it's not a family member. That's okay. Either way, they just have to be able and willing, and you've got to write it down for us.
It is important to choose a patient advocate who knows you well and is willing to serve in that role. Sometimes family relationships are strained, and the person closest to the patient is a close friend or significant other. There is no requirement that a patient choose a family member to be their patient advocate. Becky Hill from Mid-Michigan Hospice shares with us why creating an advanced care plan is important when your preferred decision maker is your significant other and not someone who is related to you.
We have patients who have a significant other, not married, but they've been together for a long time, and this comes up very often. They trust this person, and they live together, and they take care of each other, and it's working very well. Now that they're dying, we would like them to fill out an advance directive when they come onto service. They choose not to do that, and then they're no longer able to make their decisions. Unfortunately, we have to look at, okay, legally, who is now the decision maker? And when we look at next of kin, many times it's not someone that they trust and love as much as that caregiver and significant other. And just recently we've had some situations where children became the decision makers as next of kin, but they had been estranged from them for years and years. They didn't know them, and they didn't have a good relationship with the significant other who is the caregiver. So that scenario, instead of being this positive, peaceful ending to the person's life, becomes tumultuous because there's negativity, there's anger, there's confusion, and it really doesn't end up being what we had hoped for them on hospice. And so we spend those final days trying to navigate this difficult road with several people who sometimes don't even know each other and often don't agree with each other. And we're trying to bring them all together to look at how would the patient want to live their final days, and how would they want to die, and how can we make that happen the easiest way for them. And unfortunately, when there's all these competing thoughts and opinions, it doesn't always happen in the way that's the best for the patient.
Here are some questions to consider when creating an advanced care plan. What's important for you to live well? What type of care is important to you as your health declines? Would you like to receive CPR if your heart stops or you stop breathing? Would you consider being on a ventilator or breathing machine? Would you consider a feeding tube? For example, should there be a time when you are unable to take food and drink by mouth, would you consider the use of a feeding tube? A feeding tube would be placed in your stomach through your abdomen to be used for liquid feeding. Some feeding tubes are temporary, while others are used for a long time for chronic conditions. Are you an organ donor? And finally, if there comes a time when it is no longer safe for you to live at home, where would you like to live? Some people choose to live with loved ones, while others make plans to live at an assisted living facility or a nursing home. Adding information about your healthcare preferences to your advanced care plan is very helpful to your patient advocate, should there come a time when they have to make these choices for you.
One thing I've heard echoed a little bit is that it might take a little while. It might take a little while to do this, and you might have some questions that you don't understand, some medical terms that we don't know. What's a DNR? What is CPR? What exactly do all those things entail? And you're right. How do those choices affect my beliefs and my values, and how do I sort that out? So it's okay to take some time with this, and I think it's okay to ask questions. Medical providers can range from an in-home social worker to a hospice worker to a primary care provider to someone who's working in a hospital. But we as healthcare providers all need to be able to be familiar with these terms, to be able to point folks in the right direction, and to be able to help folks get the answers they need to be able to complete this process in a thoughtful way.
More than one document is available for creating an advanced care plan. To create your own advanced care plan, you may choose the free form available from Mid-Michigan Health called the Designation of Patient Advocate form. Other health systems and agencies have created their own advanced care planning documents. Alternatively, some people choose to create a durable power of attorney for healthcare as part of their trust with the help of an attorney. It does not matter which form you choose as long as it is valid. In order for your document to be valid, you must name another adult as your patient advocate, and you must sign and date your document in the presence of 2 appropriate adult witnesses who must also sign and date the document. The dates of your witnesses' signatures must match the date that you signed your document. Please note that your advanced care plan does not come into effect until you are unable to make your own medical decisions. This status is determined by either 2 physicians or 1 physician and 1 licensed psychologist. Until that determination is made, your patient advocate is not able to consent, refuse, or withdraw medical care on your behalf. How does an advanced care plan differ from other legal documents? Some people choose to create a financial durable power of attorney that gives authority to another person to make their financial decisions. A will is a legal document that details who may receive your property and other items after your death. Neither of these documents may be used to determine who may make your medical decisions or who may act as your patient advocate.
Gail and Becky, you both spoke of the importance of doing this in a way that's not in a crisis, and how wonderful that can be. It is a great reassurance. It is a great thing for patients' peace of mind when they can say, hey, I've already thought about this, and here's what I want. It's our hope that we can take care of patients in a way that respects their wishes, and in a way that helps their families know that this is the choice that they want. And when we know that choice and we've had time to think about it and process it and write it down, then that makes that just go so much more smoothly. Sometimes in the home setting, I'm asked to come in and see a family member and try to figure out if they're at that place that they're not able to make their decisions anymore. And we spend a lot of time trying to figure out if they're at that place or not. And if so, who is the next person to help express their wishes? So there's a process in place for that, and we spend time making sure that we are evaluating that thoroughly. But we ultimately do it with the goal of making sure that we are doing whatever we can to make sure that the patient's care goes as smoothly as possible in a way that they want it to be done. One question that comes up a lot is, if I make an advance directive, does that mean I no longer get to make my choices right then? And I like to tell people, no, absolutely not. An advance directive, naming a next person to be your decision maker, only comes into play if you are not able to make your choices. And up until that point, that can be filed away, put somewhere, even put in our EMR, our electronic medical record, to have on hand should an emergency or a catastrophe or a serious illness arise. People sometimes say, well, I don't need to do that yet because I don't have a serious illness, thank goodness. But, we'd like to offer that that's kind of a part of normal, just normal being an adult, is being able to write this down and being able to do this on the front end as part of advanced care planning that anyone can do. You don't have to wait for a serious illness. You don't have to wait for having a dependent or having a parent that you're caring for. You can do it as a gift to give yourself.
How does a patient advocate designation differ from a legal guardian? A legal guardian is appointed by a judge for an individual who has been determined to be incompetent through a court process involving a petition to the court, a report completed by the patient's physician, and testimony in court. A patient advocate designation is made by a competent adult and is the central feature of their advanced care plan. We usually store important legal documents in a file cabinet or locked storage. This is not the case with your advanced care plan. If an ambulance were to arrive at your home to help you in a medical crisis, they would look on and or in your refrigerator for your important health documents. It is important to share your advanced care plan with the person that you have chosen as your patient advocate and with other important people in your life. It is also important to share this document with your healthcare provider and with your preferred hospital. Advanced care planning is not just creating a document that reflects your chosen patient advocate and the medical care that you would want to receive. It's about having an ongoing conversation with your patient advocate and a healthcare provider about your preferences for medical care as you age. You should review your advanced care plan at least every 10 years and also whenever the following occurs: divorce, death, either of your patient advocate or someone close to you, when you move, for example, when you move from your home to an assisted living, or when you move from one state to another, when you receive a new diagnosis, when you experience a decline in your health, and also during this time of the pandemic. Some questions that you may be asked by your healthcare provider include: who would you trust to make your medical decisions for you if you were too sick to make them? What conversations have you had with your loved ones about who can make your medical decisions if you are unable to do so yourself? I'd like you to talk with your patient advocate about your diagnosis or your worsening symptoms. What does your patient advocate know about your recent hospital stay? Patient advocates are also encouraged to talk to the patient about their healthcare preferences and may not be aware of hospital stays or recent diagnoses.
An advance directive does not need to be just about your end-of-life wishes. It can be a document that is temporarily in place. Say that you had a stroke that we expect you to recover from, a car accident that we expect you to recover from. So there are decisions to be made during temporary times where you cannot speak for yourself. So do not wait until you're wondering how you want the end of your life to be, although that is, of course, extremely important. Think about temporary instances when you are extremely sick and cannot speak for yourself. Who should speak for you? Here are some of the common scenarios that might occur. What would you want in those scenarios? And then, when you recover, you gain back your ability to make your own decisions and you become your own decision maker again. There is never any threat of losing your ability to make your own decisions if you regain the ability to do so. So you're not bound by some documents. You're not signing away your rights at all. So it's important to think about your wishes, not just as it pertains to end of life.
Every adult age 18 and older is encouraged to create an advanced care plan. This process includes selecting a patient advocate who is the person you trust to make your healthcare choices when you are unable to do so. You may wish to list healthcare preferences in your document, and it is very important that you share this document with your patient advocate, healthcare provider, and your preferred hospital. Keeping your patient advocate updated on your health concerns and preferences for care is also very important. Advanced care planning is an ongoing process of discussing your preferences with your patient advocate and your healthcare provider as you age and as your health changes.
I believe it's very important for everyone to have some sort of an advanced medical directive in place. Anybody that's the age of 18 or older. And the reason that I believe this is because when you have your own personal health issues that arise, you may not always be able to speak for yourself. And sometimes tragedy hits when none of us are expecting. I personally have an advanced medical directive and have had one in place now for over 20 years. The reason that I have that in place is because at a very young age, I had a brother and an uncle who passed away very tragically and very suddenly. And I watched as family had to make the very, very tough decision to withdraw treatment, not knowing exactly what the wishes were of my own brother or my own uncle. So I felt it was very important at that moment. I did complete an advanced medical directive and spoke with the people that I have chosen to speak on my behalf should I become unable to do so. I know in my family alone, we've had the discussions of what is a ventilator? What does it mean? How does it affect your body? How does it affect your long-term life? The other important piece in completing an advanced medical directive is looking back at it over time to make sure that the people that you have designated as your decision makers are still those people that you want to have today. For example, they may have a different address, they may have a different phone number or contact information, and all that information needs to be updated on that form at least every other year. It may not always be a family member, it could be a close friend, it could be somebody that's outside of the family so your family doesn't have the pressure of making that decision. It can be a coworker, it could be a neighbor that knows you inside and out. Just make sure whomever you're choosing is the person that knows you the best. Another piece to an advanced medical directive is talking to those that you've chosen to make the medical decisions for you if you are unable. It's very important that you have those frank discussions and discuss what your wishes and what your needs would be should you be unable to verbalize those yourself. Those are tough decisions, those are tough discussions, but you want that person to make the best decision possible for you along with the medical team that's taking care of you. And those are all discussions we need to have because it's important that our wishes are known to those that love us the most.
If you would like assistance creating your advanced care plan, please contact Amy or Kelly. They can connect you with a facilitator in your area.